Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven, a show about writing and publishing with your host, J.F. Garrard.
Welcome to another episode of the Artsy Raven. Today, our special guest is Marianna Marlowe, and she is a Latina writer who lives in the San Francisco Bay Area. After devoting years to academic writing, her focus now is creative nonfiction that explores issues of gender identity, feminism, cultural hybridity, intersectionality, and more. Her short memoir has been published in Narrative, Hippocampus, and the Woven Tale Press, among others. Her memoir and essays, Portrait of a Feminist, is to be published in spring of 2025. So welcome.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you started writing and what's your background?
Sure. I was a massive reader my whole life, and then by default, I majored in English in college, and then again by default ended up getting a PhD in literature. And then I did academic writing, and I never thought about writing creatively. Then I didn't teach for a while, bringing up my two sons, moving back to California. And I was turning 50. My older son was graduating from high school and leaving to go to college, far away, in my opinion. And something just got triggered in my unconscious, and I don't remember the exact external trigger, but I was like, I think I want to try writing memoir. So at 50 years old, I decided to try to write creatively, and I kept it a secret, didn't tell anybody. Took some classes, some workshops, and I discovered that I loved it. So that was 7 years ago. And I really, really love creative writing. I adore it. And it's given me, like, for this stage of my life, it's giving me purpose and passion and another identity besides maternal.
So was your academic study also in feminism? Is it like similar things that you're writing about now?
Absolutely. I specialized in ethnic American writing, specifically Latina women. And then I also took classes and had exams in race theory, queer theory, of course, women's studies, gender theory, intersectionality was becoming a thing. So I studied and got my degree in all of those kinds of discourses.
Now, I've thought about writing a memoir many times, but I find it very daunting to look back. Like, so many things happen in your life. So how did you choose some of the events? Like, I was sort of browsing through your book, and they're like throughout different periods in your life. So how did you choose those memories to focus on?
Excellent question, because I, had a very steep learning curve starting at 50 with memoir. And what I learned is memoir is not autobiography, it is slice of life. But I chose to bring together my memoir thematically rather than through one topic or issue in my life or event. So my memoir the chapters are mostly essayistic and they're mostly standalone, but they're all linked by my evolution as a feminist, starting when I was 5 and ending when I finished the book, like when I was 55 years old. And every chapter focuses on something that happened to me that influenced my development as a feminist, whether it be something within my family or harassment on the street, or a friend of mine experiencing domestic violence from her husband, whatever it might be. Over time, it's made me who I am and the feminist that I am. So feminism is the connecting factor in my memoir.
Now, over time, do you find your definition of feminism, has it changed, or what do you think um, the definition of feminist, I guess, should be, or ideally what it should be?
Such a good question. Absolutely, it's changed. But I realize now, looking back, that at its core, it was always the same. I just didn't know how to define it that way when I was, when I didn't even have a word for feminism when I was 10, 15. And then when I went to college, I found feminism. I went to UC Berkeley, and it was the perfect university for me. And I even have a chapter about how there's one point in time on a plane where my definition shifted. My definition of feminism shifted. And I realized that it was kind of hard and binary and like rigid definition of feminism, being like, oh, women against everybody who's not women. And just very simplistic and reductive in my conscious mind. And then it became way more fluid and adaptable in accepting and absorbing the realities that we all face that are always changing. So, but at its core, it's always been about humanism. It's been about equality is kind of a simple term, but about everybody being worthy and complete and whole human beings, not objects in any way or less than, whether you be whatever gender, sex, sexuality, race, class you are. So that's my feminism that has evolved in my life, but it's always had that same core. I just didn't realize it.
Oh, no, you're right. I mean, half the planet is the other sex, so how can we go forward and sort of work together and get them also to understand the struggles that we're going through? Because before, I don't think women had,
Yes. And
you know,
I have two,
voice.
yeah. I also have two sons, which is a challenge.
Yes.
I just assumed I would have girls, but
Yeah.
you can't control everything in life.
So what was the hardest part about writing your memoir?
You know, it might sound simple, but I think it was craft. Like when I first started writing, I didn't know about scene and showing and reflection and musing and how those work together. I didn't know, how using present tense can have a different effect on the reader, how you can play around, you can switch back, present tense, past tense. You can, as in somebody who's filming a movie, you can go back and look from a bird's eye view. You can go close and look at an eyelash. So I didn't know all of those things, and I learned them, but I was kind of floundering inside myself for the first year. Like I was like, what's going on and how do I do it?
Okay, cool. Now, what kind of messages do you hope readers can pick up that they could use in their own life to be a good feminist?
I guess there's no real answer to how to be a good feminist. I think the answer is, for all kinds of identities and philosophies in life, is self-awareness. If you can be as honest as possible with yourself, you know, think about your biases, think about the way you've been brought up, think about how you take things for granted that are not taken for granted by other people in the world, or that you think are universal, but they're not universal. If you can put yourself out of your own body and your own sense of self and sense of reality, and almost like pretend that you are like this alien that has come and is watching you, what would you find weird? What would you find inexplicable? What would you say, why is that person doing that? Just to promote self-awareness. If you promote self-awareness, that is, I think, one of the fundamental foundations for practicing empathy. And if you have empathy for others, then you're going to be a quote unquote good feminist, or a good person, a good human in this world.
I'm just thinking about the latest US election where there were some awful messages being sent about what was it, my vote, your body, and that sort of thing. Like there's a lot
Your
of awful
body,
things on, yeah.
yeah, your
Sorry.
body, my vote forever.
Yeah, like how, oh God, how do people react to that? Like I mean, I'm afraid to write down anything sometimes because I'm not sure how, you know, what the trolls are gonna do. But how, like if someone comes up to you and they say that, like what can you say?
If we're alone, me and this person who's male, and I feel safe,
Hmm.
well, in the ideal situation, we would be like trapped in a room with nice, comfortable chairs, and I could take my time. First, I would try to get his defenses down, and I would say, "Tell me, I would just talk about his past, his life, his fears." And then at one point or another, I'd be like, "Why do you think that?"
Hmm.
And I would try to get him to see how ridiculous it is, how freakishly wrong it is, because that person has been raised and brought up in this world just like me, and for some reason he's picked up on this, either because of fear, because of desire for power. Sometimes I think they're just playing a game,
Hmm.
like, this is my move and it's gonna be devastating. But in reality, they don't really think about it as seriously as I, as a woman, think that this is, your body, my choice forever, is life or death.
Yes, it is. Like I'm reading about all these women that are denied surgery and whatnot, and people are dying.
And I just think, for the people out there who are playing a game to win, I think the whole election in some ways can be looked at as a game to win.
Hmm.
Like rah rah, pep rallies, colors, banners, flags. It's just a big, massive game to some people. But I would try to get that person to see that it's not a game.
Hmm.
So, but who knows if I would,
Yeah,
and then if I failed, I would just be really sad and demoralized.
yeah. Now thinking about like future generations, um, what kind of messages would you like them to take back about feminism and like equality in their lives?
I would love for future generations to see person before they see woman,
Hmm.
to see human before they see girl. to see wise, experienced grandparent before they see old shriveled up lady.
Hmm.
I want to just strip the veil of prejudice, stereotypes, biases that even the best of us have. I mean, I write about it in my book. Sometimes I had judgment and I had internalized chauvinism. And I don't blame myself, but it's a fact of life. So what I would want for everybody in the future is for those stereotypes not to exist. And if they do exist, that color our perception, then that everybody grows up learning self-awareness and learning how we're being manipulated and affected by our outside life all the time, so that we can at least try to see what's real and what's not, and how we want to react to it according to our core values.
Well, definitely. I have a young child too, and as they grow up, I see my influencing decreasing as school and YouTube, all these other things start influencing them. So, well, I try to get them to be self-aware, but they can't even see the sock in front of their face. So, ah, gosh, I don't know
Oh,
how to teach them. Uh, but
it's
over
really
time,
tough.
I
And
know.
in this modern world, the ground shifts beneath you all the time as a parent.
Yes.
Like you think you're like, okay, this is what we're gonna have to do about this situation, and then they're like, and then the next week you're like, wait, what's that? What's this I have to deal with now?
Now, do you do any advocacy work at all? Right. So,
Well, I've been on the board for about 8 years for an anti-abuse organization. It's called Center for Domestic Peace. It's working against domestic violence here in my community as well as in the United States. And we want to work with globally to our goal is to end is to put ourselves out of business, even though we're a nonprofit,
yeah,
to put
yeah,
ourselves out of the need to exist by ending domestic violence forever. I mean, what a world.
yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Now, I'm guessing like domestic violence is a very emotionally demanding advocacy work. Do you practice any self-care at all to protect yourself a little bit?
Being on the board, we're very much about strategy and vision. We're not quote unquote in the weeds, but of course I hear horrible stories and sad stories. And it's frustrating in this political times because federal funding depends on
Hmm.
what party is in the White House. So we're always having to fundraise, we're always having to convince people that the cause is worthy. That's very frustrating to me, that we live in a society where we have to basically say, please pay attention to our cause. I would rather live in a country where safety for everyone, healthcare, education is all quality is provided by the government, which is the collective representation of the community. But I don't. So that's frustrating to me. I think my whole life has been about developing self-care, because I've had moments where I just despair about the state of sex and gender identity in the world. So what I do, I sometimes go small.
Hmm.
I read a favorite book. I listen to beautiful music. I am lucky, I'm privileged that I can do that. I can choose to go outside and look at my garden. I can choose to have the gardener plant a butterfly attracting bush so that I can bring back butterflies. So I do sometimes I go small, and I just look at beauty and kindness and joy from the inside out, from a small thing or a smaller thing.
Okay, now one last question. Like going back to your book, I mean, there were some chapters where there were some painful memories with your parents. But have you, I guess, reconciled with them or talked to them? Like, is the relationship okay now?
It's never been bad, believe it or not.
Okay, okay.
I adored, they both died 2 years ago.
Oh, sorry, sorry.
I know it was brutal, but I adored my parents.
Mhm.
Even though I grew up with my dad being the rigid, mean one, quote unquote, and my mom being the sweet, nurturing one, even though she was racist and sexist. My mother is the longest love affair I've had in my life because, you know, I've loved her intensely since I was born. So we've had our little ups and downs and problems, but I really am a daughter of a mother that I loved and I still love, even though she's not here. I miss her every day. And then my dad, it took me a long time because my mother brought me up complaining about my dad, and then I always saw my dad through that lens, which was unfortunate until I became an adult.
Mhm.
And then slowly I got to see that, oh, that's why my dad did that. That's why my dad said that. He's not the monster, and my mother is not the blameless angel. But throughout it all, I always loved them.
Mhm.
And I never stopped talking to them, or we never had any kind of real rift ever, just arguments.
So, Mariana, you're going to do a reading from your book, Portrait of a Feminist. So, just you can give us a little bit of context before you start reading, okay?
Sure. So this is the first chapter in the memoir after this short prologue, and it's set when I'm 5 years old, and I live in California with my parents in a small cottage, and I'll just read because then you'll see what's happening. In the beginning, California, 1971. I sit on the toilet seat in our Jack and Jill bathroom, writing as fiercely as a 5-year-old can write. I'm in a hurry, worried and sad. I clutch at the crayon, pressing hard on the unlined paper. It is a letter I'm writing. What heading do I give it? Dear Aunt Clara? Dear Tia Clara? Dear Clara? Probably the latter. Because I live in the US, speak English, and never learned to call my Peruvian Aunt Tia, despite my mother speaking only Spanish to me, it must be Dear Clara. I'm halfway through the scrawled letter when my mother comes into the bathroom to find me. My mother always knew, even if vaguely, where I was. She was attuned to me just as I was attuned to her. Not quite at the same level, to be sure, for I was a vibrating antenna, always pointed in her direction, registering her whereabouts, her activities, her moods. And she, by that time, already had another child who needed her love and attention. When she sees me on the toilet seat, writing instrument in hand, she gives a little exclamation of surprise and pulls the paper gently from my fingers. It only takes her a few seconds to get the gist of the contents, to understand that her young daughter has been writing to her sister, who lives thousands of miles, a different hemisphere, and a 3-hour time zone away, to ask for money. I'm asking for money, she reads, because she, my mother, needs it. She needs it because my father won't give her any. Did I write papa or father or daddy? Of course, daddy. At 5 and speaking mostly English, why would I think to write anything else? That's what I called him then. Although now, whenever I think of him in the past, I think of him as my father. And I have called him dad for years. When I look back at him as the father of my childhood, he is a tall, quiet presence in my life, serious and authoritarian, a man with whom rules are to be followed, chores to be done, orders to be obeyed. Daddy won't give mommy the money she needs. I can hear them out in the kitchen beyond the closed door of the bathroom. They are fighting. They always argue in Spanish, which is the language of their marriage. I'll learn later that once my American father became engaged to my mother, he traveled to Peru to take a crash course in her native tongue, and always spoke it with her thereafter. Although I choose not to speak Spanish most of the time, I can, and am fluent in understanding it. So I know my mother wants cash from my father, who controls the money and makes all the final decisions about finances. In this instance, he doesn't feel she has a good case. She doesn't need the money, only wants it, and they are on a budget. The house cannot afford it. It is clear to my mother, as she tries to convince my father to give her some, that she won't get it. I hear from the tone of her voice that she really needs it, and Daddy won't give it to her because I don't know why, but I think in my head that he's mean. He's so mean. He's mean to my mother, and my mother is sad, and she needs the money. But my aunt has money. I know because I'm familiar with her house in the suburbs of Lima. I've watched from the back seat as the guard runs to open the gate when he recognizes my aunt at the wheel. I've seen the cars and the servants and the fountain and the silver. I've looked on as she sorted through her jewelry in the wide, shallow drawers designed for easy access. I've watched her spray herself with the perfumes lined up on the bathroom shelf. She is rich. I'm sure she has extra money to give to my mother. Could she send some right away? Por favor? My mother laughs a little laugh of shock and gratification as her eyes finish scanning the creased paper. Ay, mi vida, she says. ¿Qué estás pensando? Tenemos suficiente plata, no te preocupes. And she keeps the paper, my messy, half-written letter, and crumples it up and throws it away.
Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
For more upcoming episodes of the Artsy Raven about writing and publishing, visit us at jfgarage.com/arpodcast. A reminder to Patreon subscribers that there is bonus content available for every episode on the Patreon website. If you enjoyed the show, you can show your appreciation by buying us some digital coffee. The Artsy Raven is produced by J.F. Garrard. The voice in the show's introduction is Chris Gorman, and music is by Tim Moore. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, stay safe.